The verdict was a finding of liability on all counts against both Meta and YouTube. They found that Meta was negligent in the way they designed and operated their platform. They found that Meta failed to give what a reasonable company should give as warnings, and they found that Meta's failure to operate their platform in a reasonably prudent fashion and to warn in a reasonably prudent fashion was a direct cause, substantial contributing factor to harming Kaylee to the tune of $3 million, which is not a rounding error. YouTube's defenses that they were just TV were shunned by the jury, and the jury said that YouTube, Google, failed to operate YouTube in a reasonable fashion. And it's their failure to operate it in a reasonable fashion that held YouTube accountable as well. The jury also said that YouTube failed to give reasonable warnings. So diligent to be here to lend moral support, prayer support, emotion. This message is one that's important to Kaylee and her family, but it's of very great importance to a generation of people who have been affected. We've had a number of family members who have been so diligent to be here to lend moral support, prayer support, emotional support during this trial. There are so many families who've been tragically hurt through the addiction of social media. And while we've never been able to talk about the content of what these social media platforms can do, that's protected under the judge's rulings, we have been able to talk about the features. And we've sent a message with this that you will be held accountable for the features, regardless of whether the children are getting sent pornographic pictures, regardless of whether they're being sexploitated, regardless of those types of issues. Just because of the features alone that drive addiction, these companies can be held accountable. That's a huge message for these companies. I feel like what we're about here is something beyond just trying to make a buck, beyond just trying to help Kaylee. I feel like we're about something that is incredibly socially important and responsible. And I feel like we've made a great step forward. I think that the European government, I think The Hague, will be very responsive. I know the individual country governments are responsive, and I think that you're going to see even more legal changes that will alter the landscape of social media attraction and opportunity for those young child developing brains. You know, if you're 35 years old and you get addicted to YouTube and Instagram, well, shame on you. But to take that preteen, to take that teenager whose mind is still developing, and to be fully aware of how you can use a casino effect, which is what the YouTube documents talk about, using a casino effect on a young developing mind, that's outrageous. And I think that we'll get some responses. And thank you for all you do. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Here.
I'm kind of I think we're all out of words to express what we feel, and being in that courtroom and hearing those answers from the jury, it's really validated, been a complete validation of what we've been screaming on the top of roofs about for years. This was not this was a conscious decision that they made. It was not an accident, and parents are not to blame. That's for sure. They knew the harm, right? They knew the damage. They assessed the risk, and they moved forward anyway. And from my opinion, that's, you know, that's incorrigible. And this is about a thing of being right or wrong. This is not about some business decision. There's a right thing to do and a wrong thing to do, and they are on the wrong side. Stop blaming the parents. It's on you. And this is what this is showing today. And for parents, we now know that they were manipulating our children for profits while we were watching and trying to keep our families safe. Parents, no more looking away. We're headed, this is not over. We know this is a long game. We're headed to DC with the evidence we have in hand and this verdict, and we're demanding safety protections and legislation to keep kids safe online from our legislators.
Let's fix it. Big tech, us. Let's make this world a better place. But parents, we need you to join in with us because it stops today. Big tech, your gig is over.
Yep. But I'd really still like to see these companies, do what's needed to design their platforms safely for kids now and in the future. And as we move on to AI, that's even more important because kids are dying from AI chatbots as we speak. And that's not okay either. So we need to pull them in or it's just going to be out of control.
They will stop at nothing to keep these kids' eyes on the screen, and that's the message. No family is alone in this. Every kid with a cell phone, with any device, with a camera and connection to the internet is in danger. Even if you're honest about their age, they do not care about these kids except for the money that they make for them.
And if social media was the gateway drug, AI is like the crack and heroin, and it moves fast. And tech moves very fast, and government does not. So they need to catch up because by the time we get legislation, this is a victory, and we all feel vindicated. But until it has to be coupled with legislation, because this could just be like, okay, this is just the cost of doing business, and then they go back to doing it. And we hope that that's not the case. So it has to be coupled with legislation.
Yeah, and
yeses. All yeses. There it is.
Oh no, keep it down. Is that it? Is it done?
That's it.
Oh,
That's it. That's it.
yes,
That's it.
The verdict today in California and yesterday's verdict in New Mexico together mark an very critical milestone in the fight against big tech. We know that they are no longer invincible. We know that people, ordinary citizens, and lawmakers will no longer stand for them exploiting children for profit. And this is just the beginning of what I see as the new path forward for how we think about these products. We don't allow food companies to make products that are unsafe for humans. We don't allow cars to make products that are unsafe. We don't allow drug companies to make products that are unsafe. Why on earth would we allow tech companies to do that? So these cases were just the first two in what are thousands of cases being brought by state attorneys general, being brought by individual families, being brought by school boards that have been forced to bear what these tech companies call externalities of their business. And we won't accept their way of doing business anymore. The algorithms are designed to amplify whatever is stickiest and whatever will keep children scrolling, no matter how horrible. So Meta has knowingly been sending children terrible, terrible things, and taking their own measure of mental health problems, growing rates of depression, anxiety, suicidality. And it's just unconscionable to me that the CEOs of these companies have known about the harms and have not on their own taken steps to make the product safer. I hope this jury verdict will finally convince them they need to do that.
I'm going to sneeze. No, you're not. I'm going to hold your nose. No, I won't. That's weird.
It's so mean and impolite.
Dude, I was doing that, but all that popped up was gay men, okay? I was sick and tired.
Of course, these companies are going to try to appeal, and they can appeal and appeal as long as they want. But the thing is, there are millions of us who are going to stand up for what's right and who are going to stand up for kids. Today's decision is really a turning point, and the next step is for lawmakers to enact safeguards that protect kids and make sure that there are enforcement of these safeguards, because we know these tech companies cannot be trusted to do the right thing themselves. Today's decision definitely validates parents like all of the members of MAMA, all of the survivor parents who have borne the biggest brunt of the cost of these terrible decisions by these tech executives. But we didn't need validation. We already were validated because we could see, we could feel, we could measure the harms of these platforms in our children's lives. On every time a child can't make eye contact because they're so used to being on a screen, every time a beautiful child develops an eating disorder or harms themselves because they believe they're inadequate because of really horrible content that tells them that they should somehow look a certain way, or a plastic surgery filter tells them they're not normal. So we didn't need validation. We always knew that we were on the side of justice, protecting our kids, but certainly today's verdict is welcome, but it'll never bring back what the survivor parents have lost.